Neville Goddard's teacher, Abdullah. Was there a real esoteric teacher named Abdullah who taught Neville and Joseph Murphy? A plausible candidate exists. He is found in the figure in the 1920s and 30s era black nationalist mystic named Arnold Josiah Ford. Like Neville, Ford was born in Barbados in 1877. The son of an itinerant preacher, Ford arrived in Harlem around 1910 and established himself as a leading voice in the Ethiopianism movement, a precursor to Jamaican Rastafarianism. Both movements held that the East African nation of Ethiopia was home to a lost Israelite tribe that had preserved the teachings of a mystical African belief system. Ford considered himself an original Israelite and a man of authentic Judaic descent. Like Abdullah, Ford was considered an Ethiopian rabbi. Surviving photographs show Ford as a dignified, somewhat severe looking man with a set jaw and penetrating gaze, wearing a turban just like Neville's Abdullah. Ford himself cultivated an air of mystery, attracting much apocryphal and often contradictory speculation, noted Randall K. Burkett, a historian of black nationalist movements. Ford lived in New York City at the same time that Neville began his discipleship with Abdullah. Neville recalled his and Abdullah's first meeting in 1931, and US Census records show Ford was living in Harlem on West 131st Street in 1930. He was also at the same address in 1920, shortly before Joseph Murphy arrived. Historian Howard Broads, in a study of the Black Jewish movement in Harlem, wrote of Ford. It is certain that he studied Hebrew with some immigrant teacher and was a key link in communicating approximations of Talmudic Judaism from within the Ethiopianism movement. This would fit Neville's depiction of Abdullah tutoring him in Hebrew and Kabbalah. It should be noted that early 20th century occultists often loosely used the term Kabbalah to denote any kind of Judaic study. More still, Ford's philosophy of Ethiopianism contained a mental metaphysics. The philosophy, noted historian Jill Watts, contained an element of mind power, for many adherents of Ethiopianism subscribed to mental healing and believed that material circumstances could be altered through God's power. Such notions closely paralleled tenets of New Thought. Ford was also an early supporter of black nationalist pioneer Marcus Garvey and served as the musical director of Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. Garvey had also suffused his movement with New Thought metaphysics and phraseology. The commonalities between Ford and Abdullah are striking. The black rabbi, the turban, the study of Hebrew, mind power metaphysics, the Barbados connection, and the time frame all suggest Ford as a viable candidate for the elusive Abdullah. Yet, there are too many gaps in both Neville's and Ford's backgrounds to allow for a conclusive leap. Records of Ford's life grow thinner after 1931, the year he departed New York and migrated to Ethiopia. Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie, after his coronation in 1930, offered land grants to any African American willing to relocate to the East African nation. Ford accepted the offer. The timing of Ford's departure is the biggest single blow to Abdullah Ford theory. Neville said that he and his teacher had studied together for 5 years. This obviously would not have been possible with Ford, who had apparently left New York in 1931, the same year Neville said that he and Abdullah first met. In a coda to Ford's career, along with several other American followers of Ethiopianism, to accept the land grants offered by Haile Selassie. Yet Ford's life in the Ethiopian countryside, a period so sadly sparse of records, could only have been a difficult existence for the urbane musician. He was a man uprooted from metropolitan surroundings at an advanced age to settle into a new and unfamiliar agricultural landscape. All the while, Ethiopia was facing the threat of invasion by the fascist Italy. Ford died in Ethiopia in September 1935, a few weeks before Mussolini's troops crossed the border. While Ford's migration runs counter to Neville's timeline, there are other ways in which Ford may fit into Abdullah's mythos. Neville could have extrapolated Abdullah from Ford's character after spending a briefer time with Ford, or Abdullah may have been a metaphorical composite of several contemporaneous figures, perhaps including Ford. Or finally, Abdullah may have been Neville's invention, though this scenario does not account for Joseph Murphy's record. The full story may never be knowable, but the notion of two young metaphysical seekers, Neville and Murphy, living in pre war New York and studying under the African American esoteric teacher, whether Ford or another, is wholly plausible. The crisscrossing currents of the mind power movement in the first half of the 20th century produced collaborations among a wide range of spiritual travelers who traversed the metaphysical landscape with a passion for personal development and self reinvention. Mitch Horowitz.